Well, it's great to have everybody join us for Stewart's Talk. I'm Peggy Gilgis. I'm obviously a member of the League of Women Voters of the Charlottesville area, and I'm currently the chair of the League's Natural Resources Committee. Um, we're delighted that you're here to hear that you've joined us to hear about the risks of using sewage sludge as a fertilizer. It's a very important topic. Although the spreading of sewage sludge has long been a common practice throughout Virginia's rural areas, it can contain some concerning contaminants about which we're learning new information with each passing day. So policies have to change. We're grateful to have Stuart Overby, the founder of Don't Spread on Me, to present to you tonight on this topic. Stuart lives on a mini farm in southern Albemarle County. Her professional background includes marketing and design, journalism, and video production. A few years ago, she had planned to retire from her computer work and focus on a market garden and artistic pursuits, but that was all upended when a nearby farm spread treated sewage sludge, also known as biosolids, across hundreds of acres. To try to do something about this, Stewart gathered neighbors together to form a group, which has grown to become Don't Spread on Me, an organization working collaboratively with other conservation groups at the individual, county, and state level to change the policy and practices of land applying treated sewage sludge as fertilizer. And with that, oh, I shall say, after Stuart's presentation, we should have about 15 minutes for Q&A. So please put any questions you may have in the chat box so we can address them after Stuart's presentation. And with that, over to you, Stuart.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate y'all doing this. We've been trying to get the word out for a while. As Peggy said, we just started as a group of neighbors and have now become Don't Spread on Me. We have sort of a dual identity. This is our polite logo showing rural farmland as the dumping ground for urban waste. I use this on letterhead to legislators and such. And then we have the rabble rouser attention getting logo, which is, of course, a tongue in cheek play on the Gadsden flag with poop instead of a snake. So let's talk about poop. So I know some of you know things about this subject, but not everybody knows everything. So I'm just going to run through the basics, what they are, what's in them, why it's a problem, what we're doing, and how you might want to help, or how you can help if you want to. So this example, this picture is from Washington, D.C.'s wastewater treatment plant called Blue Plains. They claim to be the biggest in the world, but there's others that claim that as well. Anyway, it's big. It's sitting on the Anacostia River. Biosolids is the industry term for treated sewage sludge. And I'm picking on Blue Plains a little bit because historically, that's where most of the sludge has come from that's been spread on Albemarle County. That's changing as they've upgraded their facilities and are producing more Class A sludge, which doesn't require a permit. But yeah, so that's the case for years. So they, like a lot of Virginia wastewater systems, are a combined sewer, which means they're taking in not only waste from buildings, but also stormwater across a huge, huge area from Dulles Airport, all of DC, all the suburbs of Northern Virginia and Maryland. So some of the things that can end up in this wastewater treatment plant and most wastewater treatment plants, when they're combined, we were talking about stormwater. We've got things like dog poop, car tire particles, which are a huge problem. Anything dripping out of a car, gasoline, antifreeze, plastic and trash, everything the rain washes off of the street can end up in these wastewater treatment plants. And then there's the human poop, And everything else that goes down the drain or down the toilet in our homes, our businesses, hospitals, schools, we dump the contents of porta potties into wastewater treatment plants. Um, the contents of septic tanks that are pumped from out in the suburbs get trucked to wastewater treatment plants and dumped. And probably the most, oh, and industrial waste. The really nasty stuff gets some pre-treatment, but it's still industrial waste on city wastewater treatment plants. Um, but the landfill leachate, that's this picture in the middle, has turning out to be a really big contributor, especially of PFAS, to wastewater treatment plants, because landfills these days, we hope, are lined right with this thick plastic liner. Rain comes, trickles down through all the trash. It comes out the bottom full of the worst chemicals from all the trash, and that gets either piped to a nearby wastewater treatment plant or put in a truck and trucked to a wastewater treatment plant. Um, so out of all these potential nasties that could be in the wastewater that eventually becomes the sludge that becomes the biosolids, um, oops, yeah, the not a lot is regulated. But what happens is the solid waste is separated from the liquid, and the liquid's cleaned as much as they can, and they dump it back into the river. Then the solid waste is called sewage sludge. It's further digested and treated to kill pathogens. And this treated sewage sludge is rebranded as fertilizer and given to farmers for free. So um, the industry and even the wastewater treatment people get very testy if you equate sewage sludge to biosolids, because they want you to know it's treated. Treated sewage sludge, don't forget. All right, so what is regulated out of all these potential things in sewage sludge? Um, DEQ follows the EPA regulations, which came from a rule promulgated in 1993 and haven't changed much since. So it's nutrients, it's pathogens, and it's a short list of heavy metals is what they police. Um, so NPK and the pH of the sludge. And pathogens, they mainly look at indicator pathogens. So these are ones that are easy to test, easy to find. So E. coli, salmonella, or helminth ova, which is a parasitic worm, are what they take samples and test for on a not too regular basis. It's but plenty of experiments have shown that these, even a little bit left in the poop, can regrow pretty quickly with the right conditions, can get elevated on the wind and blown away. And this is the thing they focused on taking care of, and not the things they've ignored like PFAS. And then, whoops, hang on. Heavy metals. So we just have this list of 8. Again, you don't have to get rid of all of them, but these are the ceilings of what you can have in your biosolids when you land apply it. And the frequency of sampling and testing is based on how much sewage sludge you're generating, how much bulk biosolids. So it's like the most it can be is quarterly, and then it can drop back if you routinely pass the test. So it's sort of like USDA food inspectors. We know that they're getting like 1 in a million of our steaks actually inspected, right? So all that makes me wonder what else is in there. This is a screen grab from a very bad documentary I found on YouTube, but I thought this was useful. It's some guys took samples of a class A biosolid. That means it's digested enough that it doesn't smell as bad as class B. It still has all the same icky stuff in it though, like that doesn't get taken out by treatment. In Milwaukee, they bag theirs and call it Milorganite, which I just saw some for sale in Lowe's the other day. Buyer beware. And they ran it through a mass spectrometer, and this is what they got, like 3,500 different chemicals, which isn't surprising given the ingredients. EPA knows this. They There was a lot of resistance back in 1992 when they proposed these sort of skeleton regulations for this stuff, right? Um, and so as a compromise, they said, okay, well, how about we put, if we can promulgate these rules as is, we'll do a biennial survey of sludge from all across the nation and see what's in it. And if we find any dangerous stuff, then we can make more rules. So the first part of that promise has been kept in that they've done a biennial survey of sludge from across the nation, and they've posted the results in a library online. And this is a curated list in that they've taken similar chemicals in a lot of cases and kind of lumped them into one category. So it's 739 chemicals, but it's really a lot more than that. And even if you're not a scientist, it's if you scroll through this list, there'll be a lot of zines and things, acetates and caffeine and things you recognize. So they know that all this is in there. Oh, I should say, we don't know what happened to the 2024 data, except that 2025 happened. So the latest data we have is from 2022. It's still up there. Um, and you will also find in here PFAS. Um, so why are we so concerned about PFAS? They are called forever chemicals because, as far as we know, they last forever. It's estimated it'll take like 1,000 years for them to break down on their own in the environment, but who knows? Um, they originally were made by DuPont as a collateral discovery in pursuit of the atomic bomb. And they really started taking off in the 50s. Pretty quickly, they were everywhere. They're still everywhere and put in all kinds of things. Anything waterproof, non-stick, waxy, um, and and combined with plastics very often. There's about 14,000 different varieties of them. That's the number I hear tossed around most frequently. Um, and they're still being manufactured. And so since they are forever, they're still accumulating and accumulating. And they accumulate in our bodies as well. Our bodies of wildlife and fish and livestock. Um, so what do they do? This is from a Yale sustainability paper that's really a good explainer of the health effects. Um, but they seem to uh, have a wide range of effects. And these are things that are very, very strongly linked to PFAS. Um, there are other things that they do that have weaker links, but we know that these are definite effects, right? So, um, kidney and testicles are a favorite target of theirs, and the liver. They have all kinds of metabolic system effects with the thyroid, diabetes, obesity. One of the main things they do is, or the quickest indicator is that you have high cholesterol and you don't know why. um, and they're especially hard on the little things, the developmental problems with children in the womb and when they're young, um, and fertility problems. So this awareness of by the public of PFAS has been really helpful to our cause. And so we're sort of leaning into it, even though there are thousands of things we should be worried about with sludge. There have been these sort of periodic uprisings of citizen protest that get tamped down by the government and the industry. But this time we seem to be getting a little more traction than previous episodes. And so yeah, let's get worried about PFAS because they really are in a class by themselves. And just their presence in sewage sludge that's spread on farmland should be enough to stop the practice. They're so toxic in the tiniest amounts, they don't go away, and they're accumulating. Um, so that yeah, this article came out right as we were forming Don't Spread on Me. So we took it as an omen and ran with it. Um, there's a whole series of New York Times articles about this. It's must read. So this is how it works. I use this graphic all over the place. I love it. industry, landfills, residential sources all go into these wastewater treatment plants. The biosolids is the sludge that comes out, it gets applied to farmland. A farmer looked at this recently, though, and he went, I feel like it doesn't connect the dots of what happens after it's applied to the farmland. To me, it seemed obvious, like it's, but I'll tell you, it's filters down through the soil into the groundwater. So you'll get PFAS in your well. It runs off the land with rain. So it'll, you know, poison the fish and anything that drinks that water. And it'll get taken up in the crops. Um, oh, and it'll transpire, evaporate into the air, which is something that's just now being looked at. But definitely something else to think about. But this is what happens once it makes its way up into crops. There's the research on this is really just getting off the ground, but so far there seems to be this trend where more PFAS is held in the leafy parts of the plant, including like blades of grass, than in the fruit, in the flower, in the root, and in the seed, right? So you can be a vegan, you're not going to escape this. But all if you're eating meat, eggs, drinking milk, dairy products, then it's even worse because it's already accumulated in the animal. It's magnifying up the food chain to humans. And so some people sort of breathe a sigh of relief when they hear that for the most part, biosolids are used more for grains and pasture and animal feed than they are for produce farms, right? Um, but the truth is, it's almost worse because um, because of this tendency to take it up into the grass. That's what the animals eat, and they get really contaminated. It's also bad for people who like fish. Sorry, I stopped eating fish. Um, there are a lot of different pathways that because some PFAS like to stay in the sediment. They don't like water. Some like to stay in the water. They don't like to be on anything else. So there's a lot of exposure pathways. Again, magnifying everything up the food chain. And ironically, this whole program started with the Clean Water Act and trying to keep sewage sludge out of the ocean, but that's exactly where it's ending up. And the Chesapeake Bay has a big problem with PFAS and microplastics. And Rob Hales, a scientist at VIMS down there on the Eastern Shore, he's really honed in on microplastics and has shown that they're a huge, biosolids are a huge contributor of microplastics to the bay. So with EPA, MIA, states are just kind of out there trying to figure it out. Like, when should we do fish advisories? Most every state's doing some kind of, at least on the East Coast, doing some kind of fish tissue sampling, um, trying to figure out what they should do with the data and when to warn the public. Uh, all that to say, it sort of ends up with us living in this, what's called the exposome or exposome. And I love this graphic. So if you want to learn more about that, this is a great explanation from the New York Times opinion called "You Are Contaminated," where I got this. But it really captures it. So not all of our problems and health problems are caused by PFAS. We've got a lot going on here, but the fact that biosolids, all of the waste from this exposome is going to the wastewater treatment plant, including PFAS. It's ending up where we grow our food. It's just a patently bad idea. And so we need to undo this whole situation. And I'll talk more about that later and move toward the precautionary principle. So let's look at what's happening locally. So sludge in Albemarle County, this is a nationwide, worldwide problem, by the way. But this is us. We have two permits. One is active, so owners that are on that can spread anytime. You will see a sign up on their property. I think it's like a minimum of 7 days, or maybe it's 14 before they spread. I can't remember. But that's about it as far as warning. And then the one that we have been focused on is up for reissue. And so when that happens, it has to go through a public process. And it's a great opportunity for us to um, educate the property owners that are on it and to educate the public and get some media attention. So that's why we've been focused on this situation. We're actually lucky. We have not nearly as much sludge in Albemarle as some of our neighbors. This is Lake Anna, which might explain all the problems they seem to have every year with algae. All these brown spots are spreading areas. Um, Culpeper is a lot of people use it up there. There's this little truck right here in is a storage area. So that explains partially why, they don't want to have to truck it any further than they have to. So they look for places close to storage areas, biosolid storage areas to spread it. I'm not sure why Amelia County is, but there are a lot of people who use it in Amelia County. And finally, down near the shore, Essex County and King and Queen County, which are right on the Rappahannock, it's all going right into the bay, as another hotspot. So this permit that's up for reissue was originally 5,770 acres, including 1,650 acres that would be new. So this patch up here near Overton is all the big chunk of new, and there were some little bits of other people's too. But that person has dropped out. So this is what it looks like now. They're not going to do it. And they're still on the map, but this little patch over here, these officially dropped out. And there are a couple other people I've talked to who don't want to do it anymore. But they haven't filed the paperwork to officially drop off of the permit. I wish they would. So that's where the situation stands locally, and the process is underway. So what can we do about it? There's a lot. Here's our strategy. Um, in the end, we're going to need the feds to fix this, right? But um, it's not going to happen unless they get pressured from below. So we're starting here. We're starting with a NIMBY issue, right? But we want to be a template for other counties, and Don't Spread on Me wants to be kind of the hub of the wheel and help other counties with their organization efforts. Orange County is the only one who's so far who's taken us up on it. And it's going to be really great when we get this biosolids ordinance passed, and we can really be an example there for other counties. But yeah, it starts person to person. County by county, we did succeed in influencing their annual legislative priorities sent to the General Assembly last year, which then in turn helped us with our state efforts. We helped get language in there to investigate biosolids ordinance in the comprehensive plan. And now we're working on getting this biosolids ordinance passed. More about that in a minute. And then on the state level, we're going to be looking to eventually, we've got a bill that purportedly limits the application, but really it doesn't. So we're going to work on that some more. Deal with like what else are we going to do with it, and then stopping PFAS at the source. And if we go county by county, more counties do this, it's going to put more pressure on the state to do these things, and then state by state, and it is happening. It's going to force the feds to confront this and help us get a real solution going. But at the county level, we have drafted an ordinance. It's basically Rappahannock County reworked, and it was nice for us that Rappahannock and Albemarle share the similar geography, because they had used that to help them craft the legal justification for some of the things that are in there. So we've got the mountains in the west and all our water flowing out to the east to the Chesapeake Bay. So that helps use the Chesapeake Bay Act and Virginia Water Quality Improvement Act of 1997 as some of the justification for the ordinance, as Rappahannock has done. And I should say, Rappahannock's had this since 2007. They had a ban prior to that, but then there was some case law that said, well, it's not, it's a bit of a gray area, but people are generally interpreting it as no county can have a ban. So that case law is still sitting around. Nobody has a ban, no county, right? But we can have these ordinances that do other things, and we can test and monitor, have a testing and monitoring program as part of the ordinance. So no one has challenged the Rappahannock ordinance, and no one has spread in Rappahannock County. So we're going to say, this is tried and true, and we're going to put these same things in our ordinance. These are some of the things we could do. Area restrictions, we can say it can only be spread in the rural area zoning districts, and we can say no floodplains because we contribute to the Chesapeake Bay. We can restrict the time, just like a burn permit, and spread only an hour after sunrise and an hour before sunset. This is a really important one because if you are familiar with biosolids, this is kind of impossible that there wouldn't be an odor offensive to persons of ordinary sensibility across property lines 24 hours after you apply. But that's exactly ripped from the Rappahannock ordinance. Also, just adding, just being a pain in the ass with paperwork and administrative burden, and also predicating the whole thing on the idea that you don't want to make your impaired waters worse than they are. And if you have good waters, really super clean waters, tier 3, you don't want to impair them. So we have a lot of impaired streams in Albemarle. That's what all the red is. And we have, I think, like 1 or 2 tier 3 little streams up by the mountains. So you can use all of that evidence, data, whatever, to keep, to cite when you protest against someone wanting to spread biosolids through the permit regulations. Some things that have pushed the envelope a little bit and haven't been done is PFAS testing. The options we are putting forward in this draft ordinance is that the county may do all these things. I mean, they could pass the ordinance today, just naming someone in the county already. We're saying like the county engineer would be good to be called the local monitor, who kind of oversees a testing and monitoring program. But they may test PFAS, and the permittee should pay for it, just like if you have a general contractor who you need to require to test for asbestos, the county doesn't pay for that, the contractor does, right? So we may also require soil testing. We could tell the owner to test for that, or we could tell the permittee he's got to pay for that. And there's already a framework for that through the USDA NRCS office. It's called a SEMA 209 because it's the government, and how many acronyms can we fit in one sentence? In which, if you follow their rules, you get reimbursed by the USDA for testing your farm for PFAS. Nobody uses it because there's no support for farmers. So if you find out you have PFAS and you're ruined, so that's another story. And then there is also this power that governments have to require further testing for certain toxic organic compounds and other substances that we're saying the county has that power as well. DEQ may disagree, but we'd love for the county to try to put it in there. And then another thing that hasn't been tried is protecting the water supply by saying the water supply watersheds can't be spread in. And that would take a big chunk out of the possible areas. These with the crosshatches are watershed supply areas. So that's for Scottsville. This is all for Crozet and Charlottesville. So that would be cool. How am I doing? Oh, I've got like 5 minutes. All right. This was looked at before, and staff and attorney of the county just didn't weren't creative enough in how they thought about this whole testing and monitoring thing. I can talk more about that during questions if you'll have questions about it. We're also working at the state level. Last year, we got Delegate Amy Lawfer to bring forward HB 1072, which clarifies that yes, in fact, counties can test biosolids for PFAS. Westmoreland County wanted to. DEQ told them they couldn't, so we had to make a law that said they could, so that counties didn't have to take DEQ to court. There was this other big bill that ended up being kind of a mostly thorns, a little bit of rose, in that the numeric thresholds for how much PFAS you can have in biosolids and still spread it on land is sort of meaninglessly high. But they do at least start testing. They send the test results to the farmer, the destination farmer, along with some information. And there's some ongoing issues that the PFAS expert committee at the state level will have to address. Anyway, so it's a start. Um, so I helped with all those things as part of Virginia Conservation Network's team that puts out a common agenda briefing book every year. And then the whole conservation community is kind of rowing in the same direction on specific issues, and they send this out. We're just working on it right now. And so what's going to happen in 2027 is still a bit TBD, but this is kind of the overview of what we want to make progress on. Definitely help for rural people on wells. It's ridiculous. This great bill had been brought twice, and got killed twice. So this is kind of what we're up against, mostly at the state level, is this sort of alliance of all these different but completely ideologically aligned organizations and advocates. The wastewater industry, the Farm Bureau, which they really just support the interests of big ag. Um, and in these industry trade groups, I included this Mid-Atlantic Biosolids Foundation because I just wanted you to highlight that not only are they advocating, but they're actually funding research. So we end up with not just trade groups, but actual academicians who can deliver these talking points, and they do. That PFAS are everywhere, and if there's PFAS in the biosolids, it's from you, because it's in your poop, because it's everywhere, and we're fine, right? Is sort of the implication. Which brings me back to the exposome graphic. Got that in your head? And anyone who claims to have suffered PFAS contamination due to biosolids is wrong. It's probably the dust in their house. So solutions for this are long and complicated. I just started this based on things that have been brewing in my brain for a while. And this is totally a work in progress, so don't take it too seriously. But just to say, I and a lot of other people are thinking about this and how to pull the thread on this sweater and undo the system and redo it, because that's kind of what needs to happen. It's going to take a minute. But if you want to help, here are the different levels and the different efforts we have going on. Person, so important. I'm an introvert. I have called some of these people, cold called some farmers, but there's some that I still haven't picked up the phone and called because I'm a chicken. So if you like to talk to people and cold call people, please get in touch. And if you're nice, because we don't want to make enemies of anyone. The county level, working on the ordinance. There's a Google form that we would like businesses and organizations especially to use and sign on and support, so we can keep adding to the signatures we present to the Board of Supervisors. Also, to show up at the meetings and speak in support of the ordinance is good. And you can stay abreast of all these things if you go to our Don't Spread on Me page and sign up for a newsletter from the contact form. And then the permit that's up for reissue any day now. It's going to open up for public comment. And that's a whole other thing where we have to get 25 comments that check the boxes and fulfill their requirements in order to have a public hearing, which is where we really get the attention on the issue. So that's important. Also to talk about the permit to your board of supervisor personally or at the meetings, especially if you have a story to tell. And if you have some media contacts, we could use your help with that. If you're interested in working at the state level, this is us with Creedy last year, who graciously accepted a Don't Spread on Me t-shirt. It's fun to engage with the legislature, and VCN has a lobby day every year that I think pretty much anyone can participate on if you kind of go through their training and want to join the team on a specific issue. So there's all that. I think we should take questions. And
That was great, Stuart.
stop sharing.
You've learned so much. I mean, you've accomplished so much and done so much um, in through Don't Spread on Me. It's really a credit to you. Let's see. Looking at questions here. Okay. Kim Swanson has added a link uh, to an organization that's doing some good work in the UNC system in North Carolina. Otherwise, I don't see any questions here,
Okay.
actually.
Um, I have a lot more slides, but I was trying to go fast. So,
Do you want to continue with your slides?
um,
Um,
does anyone have?
Lisa Hillgartner has asked, what alternative help can farmers get to enrich the soil of their farms?
Yes, good question. Um, it's not an easy, um, like there's not like, oh, well, they just put this on instead, you know. Um, because again, exposome, even if you use, say, a poultry litter from an industrial sized uh, poultry farm, that's going to have PFAS in it. Um, and we're in a situation where a lot of animal feed, if it's raised conventionally, may have been grown on farms that use biosolids or even have a bit of PFAS in them from pesticide use. Um, so hence the solutions matrix that it's good to support regenerative agriculture and deal with the supply side that way. So it's a real paradigm shift, but it's something that a lot of farmers are looking for because they've found themselves in these situations where they're sort of indentured servants to things, corporations like Purdue. Um, and so, and then farmers who are farming in that way won't even feed that stuff to their family. They have their own garden and their own chickens off to the side, but they're not getting it out of the big barn to eat. So right off the bat, you have to either switch to a conventional fertilizer or use something like poultry litter, which isn't going to be quite as bad. Um, but there is a USDA pilot program started in 2025 to support regenerative agriculture, um, which is pretty great. I mean, this is at least one way that MAHA is working for us. And so if the USDA is behind it, then I think the rest of us can get behind it, and states can get behind it. And South Carolina, of all places, their legislature this past session passed this really shockingly progressive resolution to support farmers in their move to regenerative ag and to looking at farms as ecosystems instead of factories. So that's a long answer to a short question. Um, let's see, I can see these questions
Okay.
too.
Yeah.
Kim was asking about other countries. Um, Germany has switched to burning their biosolids, and this is sort of like in the short term, you're kind of stuck with landfilling it. But as quickly as you can build drying facilities, you can dry it to these little pellets and then burn it to at super high temperatures. And then you can take the ash and sequester it in like concrete and cinder block, like they do with coal ash. You can get uh, energy off of it as in part of this process um, in burning it, and then it apparently works well enough. So the high temperatures are destroyed to destroy the PFAS. The jury's a little bit out on like, does it destroy everything really? You know, how hot do you have to get it? What exactly is being released? But the Germany's that's what they're doing all across the board. They're not spreading it at all anymore. Um, so they're probably the best example, and everyone's sort of moving that direction. Um, but oh, and if you dry it, it also makes it easier to landfill. So it's really, it's hazardous waste at this point until we change our inputs.
For sure.
Um, so it really needs to go to a monofill. It really shouldn't even be put in a um, regular municipal landfill. At least that's what my friends who used to work at the EPA tell me.
Mm,
Um,
okay.
let's see, what substances don't have PFAS? They're um, natural things. Are like wear cotton clothes. Um, yeah, so Anne put an answer to that in the chat.
Mm.
Um, but they are really hard to avoid. That's the long and the short of it. You really have to.
There,
You
yeah,
can sit at
truly.
home in your all wooden house, and even then, there's no uh, guarantee that your wood wasn't grown in a biosolids coated forest. It's just going to take a while. Um, all right, let's see.
Couple questions about farmers, the Farm Bureau.
Yeah, that's on the state level. This is interesting. Martha Moore is the Farm Bureau lobbyist. And I was just listening to her because I went to a Rappahannock River Basin Commission meeting, and she stood up and talked. And she said the exact same presentation that she gave when I heard her 2 years ago. Just like, it's the greatest stuff for our farmers. Our farmers need it. It helps the soil, it's recycling. Um, and they just don't seem to be budging, at least at that level. But then I talked with a farmer here who'd been very active in the Farm Bureau. He's very much retired at this point, but he was all on board with not using biosolids. So it's and there's again the people. There are other people active in the Farm Bureau who I have yet to contact because I'm a big chicken. So I can't speak with great knowledge as to how all of the locals are feeling about it. Um, but I haven't seen any farmer up in Richmond testifying how great biosolids are. The only people who are doing that, and even Martha Moore during the General Assembly, I never saw her do it once. She was like often in the audience and listening, but it was just the wastewater treatment guy who would be publicly testifying against, regulation. Um, and the Virginia Biosolids Council. And that was about it. I would agree. Tom says, would you agree that long term sustainability of humanity requires finding a means to recycle nutrients? Yes, that's one of the main motivators for like figuring this out because especially when there's how many ever billions of us pooping every day. We have so much poop. So it's really going to throw off the system if we have to do crazy things like keep drying it forever and putting it in hazardous waste landfills. I mean, how sustainable is that? No, we've got to clean up the inputs so we can use our poop again. Apparently in North Korea, there is plenty of recycling of the poop, uh, where you have to bring your 5 gallon buckets of poop to a central location in the village or you get fined, or um, so it's been done for thousands of years, and really the poop in sewage sludge is not the problem, except in the event that we are contaminated, and so is our poop. But it's really the other stuff that's the more of a concern. Um, and so composting toilets need to be a part of the equation in a big way. And you see them around, like they'll use them in parks and natural areas where there's no nearby system to plug into, or they're on land that doesn't perk by a lake. And they're fine. They don't smell. We have them around
I think they have,
Charlottesville.
I think there's one at Ivy Creek
Yeah.
Natural Area.
So things like that, we just have to start rethinking. Um, what else? What else?
So, you sent recently a letter to the Board of Supervisors, which had several organizations um, involved, including League of Women Voters and PEC and I don't know, Toadier Creek Watershed. Uh,
Yes.
and I'm wondering if you've had a response to that, how listeners on this call can support that. Um,
Um, Let me bring it up for you. So, hang on a sec. I'm going to share my screen again. Okay. So if you go to don'tspreadonme.org, um, and right at the top, you'll see this brown banner. That'll take you to our letter, which lays out the case, um, and how we're thinking about things as far as the ordinance goes and how it ties into the AC 44 and how testing would work. And this is our coalition that's signing on. So we'd like to have more people sign on. So that's a way you can help, is to go, or especially if you're like can represent an organization or know someone who can, and just fill this in. Um, it'll come into a spreadsheet I have, and we'll add it to our um, our list of people to support the ordinance. And you can even read the ordinance itself from here. There's a draft. I haven't had an official response. Ann Malik has always been a big supporter, way since before my time here, of doing something about this issue. So she's on board, and I've had expressions of support from, I think, from everyone who's a supervisor currently, except um, um, sorry, my brain is fried. Who is our chair?
oh, Ned Galloway.
Yes, Ned. Thank you. Um, but yeah, we're working on that too. So if anyone's a constituent of Ned, please get in touch with me. Since we need to sit down with him and so get him to support it too, and talk to staff. So
Right.
um, yeah, I would say just get in touch, and I'll plug you in wherever you feel you are would be useful.
It's such an important issue, and to look at your map that shows the impaired waters in our county is very sad, because I think that most of us think of our county as being a beautiful green place, and it is that, but we need to be better stewards of it, clearly. And there's so many inputs, as you said, for the biosolids. We really need to clean up our act. We need to be much more aware we've been careless. You were you were going to speak a little bit about the precautionary principle, just how we haven't been living by that.
Yeah, and that is another way that Europe is moving ahead of us, is adopting a slightly watered down version of the precautionary principle in their EU documents. And and so that's, it's a shift in how you look at things, that you don't make things because you can. You don't assume that things are safe until proven otherwise. Um, there's a really good article that, okay, I should say, Maine is kind of leading the way on this. And they're sort of the states who are paying attention and trying to do things. There's the Maine model and the Michigan model. And um, the Maine model is very much superior to the Michigan model. They, let me see if I can, here we go. I'll put a link to a recent article about it that Bill Pluker, who's a farmer and also a state legislator in Maine, wrote this opinion piece not long ago. Okay, that's in the chat if you want to go there. So it has, the Maine model has 3 pillars, which is testing, support for farmers, farmers' health, and research. Specifically, research for mitigating land if PFAS is found on it. So what's cool about that part of it is it's sort of turned into a bit of an economic driver, because now you've got all these state grants to fund research. And of course, who's going to apply for it the most is the state school. So a lot of it's going to University of Maine and other research organizations in Maine. So sort of keeping the money there and having a multiplier effect.
How do
So
you
that helps.
mitigate it?
Yeah, helps with the cost of having to landfill it, and because they stop spreading too, and then supporting farmers where they either buy their land outright if that's what they need. There's, I don't think it's taken effect yet, but there's even a provision to support their mental health, and there is a provision in effect to support their physical health, and test their blood and help them. Um, there's not much you can do. There's some experimental things of like taking oat bran before a meal, make sure it's organic. Um, that'll help get it out. Some evidence that statins will help get it out, as they also get your cholesterol out. Um, but it's, this is way beyond thinking of like, how can I not eat, how can I get this out of my body, because it's everywhere, and if you're getting out of your body, you're putting it right back into the environment, where it's just going to stay forever and rotate through all of us. So um, I understand that's a motivation for some people, but I would hope we would think beyond that at this point with PFAS. Um,
Okay.
so yeah, that's, they're not messing around with numeric levels. So the Michigan model is how we got our numeric levels in Virginia. Um, yes. Anne's note about fiber and PFAS is that's what I understand too in the chat. Um, the Michigan model is not so good, kind of industry uh, influenced that, and so they ended up with these numbers that, okay, I'm gonna get really into the weeds with the science for a second. So the numbers, the thresholds, any sort of regulation that we have is just on 2 of these things that are legacy PFAS, and because everyone agreed and it was public enough that these things were just so toxic and bad that companies voluntarily stopped making them and using them. PFOS and PFOA, long chain PFAS. So those are the only 2 that have any EPA regulation about them, and they're just about water, not biosolids. So So anything that's done is just at this point referring to those two that we know are no longer in use, and two out of 14,000 or however many, right? So the numeric thresholds we have that came from Michigan are like 50 parts per billion in the biosolids at the wastewater treatment plant. If you have that, anything above that, um, or you can't spread it. But the wastewater, they know damn well that they're going to come in under that. That if they find some with that high of level of PFAS, that's an anomaly, and it doesn't do anything for the things that are in use and are increasing, and the PFAS and PFOA amounts are decreasing. So they know they're going to stay under these limits if they can just keep the focus on these two, right? So we really also have to regulate them as a class of chemicals, not this piecemeal approach, which again is sort of antithetical to the precautionary principle idea.
Wow.
7:59.
Yep. Well, Stuart, first of all, thank you so much for sharing all this information with us and the need for action and how we can take action. I want to thank our president of the league, Lisa Hill Gardner, and my colleagues on the NRC for their support. And also, big thank you to Jessica Harris, who's our gifted creative um, designer and technical guru. Uh, I hope you all will visit the websites in the chat for Don't Spread on Me and for the League of Women Voters. We have a lot going on this summer, and so does Don't Spread on Me. Let's help get regulations in Albemarle, help Central Virginia get regulations for spreading biosolids, and share this information with friends and family and make some more progress. All right. Well, thank you all
Thank you
for
all.
attending this webinar, and thank you again, Stuart, and have a good evening.
Yeah, thanks so much.